You're saying they're actually, and I know you don't like Hillary Clinton, but you're saying they're scapegoating Hillary Clinton.
What I'm saying is worse than that. Look, I have said a lot of negative things about Hillary, and I understand her exceedingly well over 20 years, but I grant my opposition the traits and talents that she has. She's tough, she's resilient, she knows how to work under stress, and what he did, Gowdy, as a prosecutor has to know his witness. He has to understand the psychology. What he did is what we call a bear trap in the financial markets. He fell right into the trap, and he got caught. He didn't know what he was saying. He had no idea of what he was talking about, when in fact she was basically displaying everything she had always said.
Okay, well, let's get back to this and get away from Hillary for a moment. What is the bottom line? Is what you said 4 years ago.
The bottom line? Nothing will happen. Ambassador Stevens, unfortunately, went on his own. Whether he's also a member of a three-lettered agency, I don't want to say. But my suspicion is he wasn't just an ambassador in the State Department. The State Department did the best it could. It had no real jurisdiction over a consular service or an entity which is really under a covert operation which belongs primarily to the CIA. And it's right there in that movie, 13 Hours, when the CIA, DCI, and the station chief said, listen, you've got 8 hours of drones on me. When are you going to give us help? And the military refused that help. So you've got Panetta and you've got Martin Dempsey to answer for those questions. It's not an issue for Hillary Clinton. It was not an issue for Pat Kennedy. It was not an issue for Eric Boswell. It was an issue for General Ham, who was head of AFRICOM, and the Navy admirals who were only 2 to 3 hours away. That's the issue.
Okay, well then who ordered the stand down then? What was the whole goal of Benghazi? What really happened?
What really happened in Benghazi was the fact that they were putting in a unit which they knew could not be an embassy. And instead they used it, as we use all over the world, a place which is under the jurisdiction of the CIA or DIA or MI, military intelligence, to make it a covert operation in a place where they had transfer of guns going into Turkey and Syria. That's a legitimate entity within our covert operations, within the intelligence community. What is not legitimate and was not appropriate was the fact that Hillary, Susan Rice, and Samantha Powers, all three women, the tripartite of incompetency in the White House, decided to take down Gaddafi. That's the issue that should have been analyzed and handled. Neither one of them, including the DCI, Petraeus, knew how to take down Gaddafi and understand the consequences of that regime change. And that's what, in fact, happened. But sui generis, the fact that she was in charge of a consulate that was under covert operations, the answer is no. I'm sorry, my dogs are barking. But basically, the dogs of war are barking. Basically, what I'm saying is Gowdy had transferred the whole optics away from the real issue of incompetency and regime change to one of really enforcing Hillary Clinton's strongest traits: resiliency, commitment.
Sure, and making her look like an underdog. Well, just to be clear, though, you're supporting Trump. You're not supporting Hillary. You're just saying... I'm supporting
Trump, but I think Trump has a problem now. Trump had wanted to have Trey Gowdy as the Attorney General. That was a big mistake. Trey Gowdy went after Rubio, which I suspected. But the real issue here is that this is a warning to Trump, whom I do admire, and I think he has a real problem now in understanding what the Benghazi issue is all about, and so do his coterie of Republican hacks. I mean, he's hired a whole bunch of Republicans who have been part of the Cheney-Bush administration: Kevin Kellum, Manafort. I mean, he is not really changing what has happened over 14 years. When he was left alone and Corey Landowski helped him out, that was the Trump that we supported. Now many of us are beginning to say, wait a minute, you're bringing in the same guys who were under Cheney and Bush and others, and Manafort is the man of the system. He brought in Kevin Kellum. You look up Kevin Kellum, he was director of communications for Cheney.
Sure.
So basically what's happening now is a co-optation of Trump and the insulation of Hillary Clinton by none other than Trey Gowdy. This is what happens when you're not very bright, when you're not very competent, and when you're narcissistic, and you're underwritten by the American taxpayer. Welcome to the American government.
All right, Steve Pieczenik's perspective on Benghazi, and I get it. Hillary's really bad. She's clearly involved there, but there's people who are in the chain of command, who have the job to not stand down. And I know you've been a fan of Dempsey in many ways. You've said here that he definitely stood down as well. StephenChinnick.com. Thank you, Steve.
My pleasure. Take care.
You bet. We'll be back. Your phone call straight ahead. What do you think about all the news we've covered today? Wide open phones. 800-259-9231. 800-259-9231. By the way, the Hillary for Prison shirts that sold out, another 18-wheeler arrived with a new design. They're back in at InfoWarsStore.com. And they know the average person doesn't want to fight some global tyranny. So they just go, that doesn't exist. That's a tinfoil hat. The average lazy person says, okay, I want to believe that. But then pretty soon you turn on the local news and it goes, the UN's in charge of bringing in the refugees into Texas. You're going to pay for it. And by the way, 22% of them got TB. And we're not going to treat them or test them. We're going to put them in school with your kids. And high schools all over the country are reporting refugees raping young girls. There was a report out of Germany where the two migrants raped a woman. It's on Infowars.com today. And the headline was, migrants told police the reason they raped her was they'd had a bad day. There's just a German woman there in the middle of the day at the flower garden, having her lunch, sitting back, having a 10-minute snooze on a park bench. Who hadn't done that after having her lunch? They just raped the living daylights out of her, and they admit it. They said, it's a woman. That's what you do. I mean, you're just a woman there, you rape her. Now, there's the headline. Muslim asylum seekers in Germany having a bad day, so they raped a woman. And it gets weirder and weirder and weirder. And in third world countries and a lot of these cultures, this goes on. I mean, look at Mexico. Police, troops routinely rape, arrest women. Amnesty International reports. And that's because you've had the collapse of civilization. That stuff goes on here, too. Now, I don't want a civil war with the police, but I'm going to fight for our police not to turn into this. And in some areas, they have. That doesn't mean having some civil war, though, that George Soros finances is going to fix it. Taking our country back. Look, the police being corrupt is a reflection of the general people. We need to change that. And by the way, if you don't think we can't go the way Mexico's gone, you're gravely mistaken. Most societies end up collapsing into this. And then only groups of thugs will take the jobs because good people won't be part of it. And then more evil gets in, and that's how you go. I mean, I've studied the sociology. 50 years ago, Mexico had a lower crime rate than most U.S. cities, and the people, it was all family-oriented, super nice and honorable in almost all areas, and there weren't police raping women. If you raped a woman, their family would come kill you. But Mexicans had guns to a certain extent back then. See, Mexico's been through the liberalization process, you see, where government's God. And we're going there, too. A lot of places, they won't even, oh, by the way, now they're admitting, okay, we did arrest people in Idaho, and there was a sexual assault and all this, but, you know, the prosecutor's now threatening people, and they're trying to cover that up. It's the same story. Cover up for the Muslims. Because if you can get away with that, you can get away with anything. Besides, they're too busy, you know, telling men they shouldn't wear pants. That's the real problem, isn't it? Sheila in Maine, you're on the air. Go ahead. Thanks for holding.
Hi, Alex. It's an honor to talk to you.
Honor as well. Go ahead. Thank you.
Listen, I went on and looked up about John Ash, you know, related to the Clintons and, you know, the so-called weightlifting.
Yeah, sorry, you faded out there. You said the so-called what?
I'm sorry. You know, John Ash, when you were saying about the weightlifting incident?
Yes.
Okay. Well, you try and look it up on Bing or Google, and that doesn't even show up. So I was trying to say was that they're monitoring or filtering, you know, so, you know, when the information comes out, they don't want you to see it.
Well, ma'am, you've got the Secret Service agents and you've got the FBI agents that have worked around the Clintons with her punching Bill Clinton and her screaming and threatening to kill people and her with all her girlfriends and her, you know, on drugs or whatever when she was younger. When you try to search, you know, Hillary criminal investigation, it goes to her and crime bills. So, yes, Google admits they've been censoring for her, and they meet weekly with her campaign to help game everything. That's why you've got to go seek out the key knowledge When you find it, create records of it yourself. Print it out. I always print articles out for myself. And then when you find key intel or key videos, save those. Get those out to people. Share those links. And it's a fight between artificial intelligence already being programmed by technocrats and we the people. Doesn't matter how much censorship they do, they can't stop us sending emails to people without totally turning off the lights. That's why everybody should sign up for the free newsletter, Infowars.com/newsletters. We can send you stuff. They try to censor it. But great point, Sheila. Thank you. Scottish John, you're up next. All right, I'm going to try to run through your calls as quickly as possible. Scottish John tried to call in Sunday, never had a chance to. We're going to go to him right now. Then Chris and Casey and Mike and Jason and others. Jason says he sees UN-marked cars pulling over cars. You know, I would think that'd be a hoax phone call, but we're going to go to him. But I'm telling you, now they have brand new armored vehicles coming in at ports, being shipped around the U.S., and they're pre-deploying UN peacekeeping equipment. It's not like 20 years ago when people would find some old thing in Louisiana that was like a couple thousand old trucks from the 70s and 80s that had UN on the side that would have been shipped into the U.S. for scrap. And I'd get on air and say, no, I don't think this is a UN invasion, but they are training for gun confiscation. Here's a training manual, or here's the military training to do it. And they'd have their operatives go, you're covering up. The UN launches the takeover next month. Fed. And, of course, they wouldn't launch the takeover next month. The truth is it's not going to be one big takeover. It's just, oh, the UN suing Sheriff Arpaio. Oh, the UN tells us to let the refugees in. Oh, Obama gets his authority to do all this and go into Syria from the UN. Oh, Obama doesn't need Congress. Oh, Strong Cities Initiative is going to sue local police departments that don't sign on the Democratic Party operation. And look, the Democrats are taking over to be the one final party. The Republicans at the top are just their operatives and collaborators, but the Democrats are the takeover group. It's clear. And so it's not that the UN's taking over. Globalists set up the UN to transfer power to it. But it was the Rockefellers. But we really are going into a world government program. That's what the unelected euro is, just like they say you can't get out from underneath our system. And then, as we told you, England voted to get out, and they're saying, oh, sorry, we're going to trigger in this clause the bureaucrats wrote, that you have to have another vote, and then another vote. Another 5 years drags on. Or even if you vote to get out, like, was it 5 different countries that had referendums? It was France and one other country in 2005, and they voted like 70-something% in France to get out. Are they out of the EU? No, they're not. And now the EU says, we're preparing a military leadership to take over all the militaries and merge them into one. You're not allowed to leave. I mean, it's just sensational. But they'll have Beckham, the soccer player, get up there with his wife, the Spice Girl. And I think it's really good and loving for the immigrants. And if you're handsome like me, you're for it. And all the girls go out and protest and go, we like Beckham. Open the borders immediately. Ooh. I mean, it's this triumph of idiocy. But even when we triumph, they just go, sorry, we're not going to stop it. And all the liberals then hang their arm around the jihadi mayor and go, I love Islam. You're like, here's footage of them killing 1,000, homosexuals. You're like, shut up, homophobe. And you're like, that doesn't make sense. That's illogical. You're mentally ill. And they go, I know we are. We're in charge. But see, they're not. They run nothing. They're nobodies. But they just accept whatever the screw job is and play fantasy land that they're in charge. It's called mass Stockholm syndrome. It's called learned helplessness. It's called the normalcy bias on PCP. Scottish John, I met this guy years ago at protest. Scottish John lives in Texas. Scottish John, what is your take on all this?
Hey, Alex, how you doing?
Good, my friend. Go ahead.
I don't know if you heard, but do you know that England got knocked out of the European Soccer Championships yesterday?
Yes, and I know they're going to knock them out of everything and say you're not part of Europe now. Even though they could compete in Europe before, the dictatorship says you can't be part of anything now.
I just thought it was funny. They managed to exit Europe twice in the 1 week. And listen, what you were saying earlier about older women, you know what they say about older women? The older the fiddle, the sweeter the tune. Now, I want to go back a couple of years ago when I was on your show talking about the Scottish independence referendum, and which we lost. And it wasn't too long after the votes were announced, or the result rather was